All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app. Your home smart speaker up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. What's happening, Dave?
I'm going to sign a one-day contract to work at OverDrive.
Is that right? This is a one-day ceremonial contract?
Just for Friday.
Yeah, Jose Bautista. He's going to retire a Blue Jay with the old one-dayer. I've been on these rants for a long, long time. I have to be consistent, Dave. Yep. Even though this one's in my backyard, even though we just had Jose Bautista on, we're going to do a bit later this afternoon that will revolve around Jose Bautista, the level of excellence, his standing in the Toronto sports scene. I think these are the goofiest thing in sports.
Yeah.
I just think it's so material and it's so silly.
It is.
A one-day contract to retire with the team.
I know.
Like, really? And if it's a one-day contract, play him tonight.
That's my
Put him in the lineup.
Like, remember when Gordie Howe did that? Like, I'm signing a one-day contract. I'm going out and playing.
Absolutely.
If I can.
Yeah. Let him sit on the bench, and if it's a blowout or something, give him a bat. Let him have a pinch hit in the ninth.
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm 100% behind that.
But, like, I've never understood who this is for.
Right.
Like, is it for Jose? Fine. If the player is adamant and it's very important to them, okay. Is there some sort of benefit for the team that I can't necessarily think of? But I don't buy that fans are like, oh, this is so great. Like, our guy is now. I couldn't sleep at night because he was retiring a Philly.
Right.
But now he's actually a Blue Jays. So chew on that one. Where was he? He was with the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies, I think, his last year.
Yes.
Come on.
Hasn't played a game in 5 years.
I love Jose Bautista.
Yeah, we all love Jose Bautista.
The one-day contracts are just, I don't get it.
No,
I never will.
I guess it's a PR department.
Of course it is.
It's like we got to start the day.
It's a feel-good thing.
The feel-good story. Breaking news.
Yeah.
Jose Bautista has signed. Okay, it's not really breaking news. It's kind of a planned thing. It's a bit of a fake out. He's not. Yeah, it would be breaking news if Jose Bautista was suiting up tonight.
Play him tonight.
Yes. Then,
that would be my
Then we
suggestion.
would pay attention. Then it would have some significance. Mm-hmm. Then it would be an athletic feat.
Right.
Say, I haven't played in 5 years and watch this. I can still swing a bat.
At a minimum, get him in the cage before the game.
Right.
Like, if you're going to put this guy to work because now he's an employee again for the day, I'd like to see some video to see if Bautista can still absolutely destroy baseballs to left field.
Right.
Can he still turn on balls? Can he bat flip in the cage? That's something I'd be willing to check out. I'd be a sucker for that. I'd be all over that. I think a lot of fans would. But I have to be consistent. I understand I'm raining on the parade of a really cool Toronto sports story right now. Bautista, a lock level of excellence guy. Unbelievable Blue Jay. He is the face of the biggest moment of the century for this club.
Oh, yeah.
The bat flip game 5 of the Dome. Nothing else comes close. And it was a great player. Great player for the Jays.
Career leader in WAR, if you like the WAR number.
Statistical numbers through the roof.
Career, single season home run leader with what, 54
home runs.
I mean, no one on this. I don't think Vladdy's going to hit 54 anytime soon.
No. I mean, he tapped out at 48, and it felt like he was hitting bombs every single night.
Right.
And I think Bautista had multiple seasons of 40-plus.
Yeah.
Great player. I'm all for the level of excellence. I love it. I love that Jose's in town. There's video circulating. He's down at the park. He had a press conference earlier this afternoon, and he'll do his thing tomorrow, right? He'll be out there. They got something taped. He's going to speak to the crowds tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah.
And, now, the story of Jose has been pushed to the back burner today by his Toronto Blue Jays.
Yes.
Because Alek Manoah has been sent down, and he's not going back to the Florida Complex League.
No.
He is on his way to Buffalo. Like, this is a true demotion now. This is no longer a scenario where it's a rehab and they need to reset. This is, we can't have you around anymore. We have to move in a different direction. And I think this one will likely land more sensitively from Manoah. Because I think, when he first was sent down to the Florida Complex League, I'm sure there was an understanding at that point, even internally, which can be very difficult for anyone to to accept, and especially athletes who a lot of why they make it to the pros is because of their confidence.
No doubt.
You have to have so much confidence. I think in a candid moment, a month and a half ago, Manoah would have said, I got to get out of here. Like, it's really, really ugly.
Right.
And I accept this rehab stint.
Sure.
Send me to Florida, get me out of here, let me reset. This one, to me, has a very different messaging. This is not anything acute. He didn't have a good outing a couple of days ago.
No.
But it wasn't horrendous. It wasn't he couldn't get out of the first inning and gave up 8 runs and got rocked and walked a bunch of guys. It was 4 innings pitched, 4 earned, number of strikeouts, couple hits, few walks. Like, not good, but not horrendous.
No.
And yet, still, there was a conclusion by the team. This is no longer about you. It's about the other guys on the roster. We can't have you here.
Right.
That one, I think, stings even more.
Oh, yeah.
I think this one will hurt even more.
Yeah, and you can call into question a lot about how this whole thing has gone down, because there was no shortage of not second guessing, but first guessing about the way the demotion went down and the way the re-promotion back to the big leagues was way too quick.
Yes.
Like 1 month was not enough, and there was a chorus of baseball experts, including non-experts like us,
yes,
saying this doesn't make any sense. Like, forget baseball expertise. This just doesn't make sense that a month ago this guy couldn't pitch in the major leagues. He got rocked in the Florida complex, had a slightly better outing in New Hampshire AA, and suddenly he's going up against the Detroit Tigers. Like that made no sense. And as much as he was respectable in that,
he had a good outing in Detroit.
In that first outing, like the whole thing holistically did not add up, right? Like, why now would you bring him up? And
it felt premeditated.
It felt premeditated. It felt premature. It felt like there was pressure from the player side to get him back quicker than maybe he should have gotten back. The team acquiesced, or the team was certainly allowed it to happen, no matter which way you want to look at it. And now it seems like the predictable result has occurred.
You're right.
Well, he wasn't ready. He's not good enough to play at the major league level right now. And he's to your point, he's a liability.
Yeah, that's what he is. He's got Manoah's got a 5.87 ERA on the year, minus 1.2 wins above replacement. So
that's not good.
That alone, if you're a guy going out there every 5th day and you are well below a replacement level arm, that's probably telling you everything you need to know. And I think there was certainly an element of pressure, likely from the player and the status of the player and the player's representation, about, I think, in retrospect, them having a planned attack. You're going down for basically exactly a month.
Right.
You're going to get 1 start here, 1 start there. We're calling you up. Detroit's terrible. Then the break, and then we reset. We move on with our lives. And that's exactly how it played out. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was basically ironclad when they sent him down.
Right.
Like, regardless of what happens, you're coming back up against Detroit. This is what we're doing.
Which doesn't make sense.
But this is a largely analytical group. This is a group that seems to make a lot of plans beforehand, and they live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah.
And again, because of who he is, what he represents, and I think there was an element of hope, of fantasy, and possibly desperation for the Jays, because as much as you were watching Barrios have a redemption year, which he has, you say Kikuchi have a redemption year, which he has, there has always been an element of anxiety hanging over those two guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, will it revert back to what we just saw a year ago?
Right.
And I think likely, to be fair to Atkins and to be fair to Shapiro, in the back of their minds, they probably always envisioned a World Series pursuit having Alek Manoah as a stud.
Of course.
Like playing a role of a stud in that.
Right.
So it was
your
almost
opening day starter.
Exactly. It was like forced ignorance. It was like, we have to force ourselves into believing this. And then they brought him back up, and now they've realized that you can't fake it.
No.
There's nothing you can do. You can't paint this any other way than Manoah is a liability on the mound, and it sucks. You feel awful for the guy. It sucks for the team because of the high expectations that came with him. But at the same time, glass half full, Kikuchi, Barrios, Gausman, Bassett have been really good.
That's what I mean.
So, and now you get a scenario here where Hyunjin Ryu, basically a start and a half into his return, he's sticking around, and Manoah's going down.
That's the interesting part of it.
Like, that's amazing.
Because those guys have sort of been on parallel tracks here, right? Well, Manoah was back in the Florida Complex League working out the mechanics in the pitch lab. Ryu's coming back off Tommy John, and we were all sitting around here going, well, which one is going to be useful? What are the odds either one is going to be useful?
Which I'm not sure we have that answer yet. Ryu hasn't shown enough, and Manoah has the option. They can send him. They can't do that with Ryu. You can't just send him to AAA.
Right. That's a good point. But the point is, like, it says something that even though the jury is still out on Ryu, they've decided.
Yes,
they'd rather see more of Ryu than more of Manoah.
Right.
Think about that.
It's
like, that's not a good sign for Manoah.
Shocking. No, it's not. And the pitcher is in there. The guy is in there. And we saw it. It's not as if it was only 5 starts in September last year.
No.
This was a full season and a half of excellence, of elite pitching, top 5 pitching in the American League. So
elite swagger and confidence that stole the show at the All-Star game.
Right.
Which is just hard to believe.
Hard to believe that it's come to this point where it's such a pitfall. But it is so extreme to the point where this is his second demotion that it resets all of the questioning about what's going to happen with this guy the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Because again, now this is not round 2 of rehabilitation. This round is we can't have you around anymore.
Right.
It's too deep into the season. It's unfair to the guys. We're in a race here.
This is not a developmental opportunity.
It's too late now.
Right.
It's, go down and see what you can do. And eventually they'll call him back up. Likely in September when the rosters expand, he'll probably come back up. I have no idea what they're going to do with him.
Yeah.
You send him down and you make sure that he's still starting games. You're not thinking bullpen at this point in his career. Like, you can't be anywhere close to that. You got to continue to cultivate him as a starter.
You do.
But, if this year continues to be a complete write-off, worse than a write-off based on the statistics, it's not like this was an injury. This is him playing, but it's just not performing. What is the conversation at spring training next year?
Right.
Like, how do you forecast him in your rotation next year?
You can't. But here's my thing, though. Like, what would have happened? The what if of this situation to me is, what would have happened if the more logical common sense approach to the initial demotion would have played out, which is instead of coming back in a month, maybe he's coming back about now, 2 months later. Like, clearly he needed more work on the developmental side of things, which is what they've just arrived at today. By the way, you're going to have to go develop somewhere else because this is the major leagues and we're in the business of winning, not helping you figure out your problems. But what would have happened, Hayes, if they would have just said, bite it, man, like, suck it up and understand that this is not going to be a quick process?
It's a question I'm sure they're asking themselves.
Everybody with a brain, it seemed to me, everybody that I respected and listened to on this topic was saying that at the time. They were saying, he can't come up now. He's got to stay down longer.
Right.
You don't get over what the problem is with him in 1 month. You don't get over it in one decent start in AA. Especially after you got rocked in the Florida Complex League a week before that. This is going to take more time. Everybody
It was unanimous shock.
That.
Unanimous
and now,
shock.
Guess what? The Major League Club is acknowledging that all those guys were right.
Well, and that's the kind of amazing thing about this story. I remember when it broke when he was being sent down, we were at Oakdale.
Right.
It was the week of the RBC Canadian Open. And the night before, I believe it was when he couldn't get out of the first inning. And I think everyone had been bracing for it for the better part of 2 or 3 starts.
Oh, yeah.
Like, something's got to give here. The opinion had been out there from a lot of insiders, a lot of experts, talking heads, fans, etc. Like, a lot of people had come around to the idea, like, enough is enough. You can't keep putting him out there. It's not fair to him.
No.
Like, you hadn't reached the it's not fair to the team point yet. It's not fair to him. You got to get this guy out.
Crushing this guy's confidence.
You're crushing him, and he just doesn't have it, and he's not going to find it until he gets out of here. So the buildup towards that was anticipated, and yet even when it happened, the ripple effect was significant because of who he was, what he represented, and the fact that it had finally become a reality that he was no longer going to be a part of the rotation. This announcement came down today, and it's certainly not a paper transaction.
No.
It's not because of who he is and the context involved. but it does feel different today.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it kind of feels like everyone had quietly been saying, hey, man, this guy is
This
just
ain't
not,
working out.
Yeah, like, I don't know, guys. And it wasn't like, again, there wasn't some acute moment you can point to where you're like, man, he gave up like 6 in that inning, 3 home runs, a mess. It's just kind of been the same thing. Not that good, too wild, velocity down, not a ton of zip. Like all the mechanics they spoke of, all the things that they had him working on, and understandably and predictably, Schneider and company were saying are moving in the right direction. They weren't moving in the direction they wanted them to. They're not moving in the direction they wanted them to. Hence, the decision to send them down today.
Well, and to that point, like, some of these things can take time. Like, we were hearing that same thing. It reminds me of last year when Kikuchi was struggling, right? And Kikuchi looked like a liability that would never be redeemed. And what did we hear from the team? Oh, he's working on the right things. Mechanics are coming around. We know what the problem is. He's addressing it. And we were sitting here going, that doesn't seem likely.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is not going to be a long-term fixture on this club. And yet, what do you know? A year plus later,
they're still hoping he will.
Well, yeah, you're right.
And he's back, to his credit. He's worked hard.
He's a lot better than what he was.
Yes.
And I guess that does point to the fact that baseball's a funny game that way. Like, there aren't a lot of quick fixes.
It's a grind, man. And like, pitchers are different than hitters because hitters have to step in the box every single day. But that 5th day comes up quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it rapidly approaches.
Oh, yeah.
And you know it's coming, and you've got it circled. And it's a buildup. It's like building up towards a fight. You know, like, starting pitching is a very different mentality than basically any other sport because you can look ahead. You know when you're coming up. But, like, when you're not on the mound, no one's paying attention to you.
Right.
Nobody is. But the second you get out there, the whole world's watching you.
And the thing is, in this day and age, and it's been like this for a long time, but you can't hide anything. There's nowhere to hide. When you've got a weakness, everybody knows it within minutes, right?
Yep.
Within seconds.
It's wild. Like Manoah being sent down, and you can send me a tweet at Hayes TSN. Leaf Guy 99 tweeting and asking, wondering if the early Manoah call up was a chance to showcase for a trade that didn't happen. Now the deadline's passed and it's time to fix the problem. I suppose that's possible. He did make, what did he make, 3 or 4 starts again before the break, before the trade deadline. I don't picture this front office being in a situation there where they thought they'd sell on him when he was that low of value.
I was going to say, they'd be selling low, right?
Extremely low, and you still are. Like, they're not going to, you can't trade him this offseason now unless there's another team that, for whatever reason, is willing to accept him at his highest possible value. But why would any other team do that right now?
I don't think there would be any scenario unless you've just given up on him and you just want to give him away.
Right. If there's something deeper here that you see and you know.
Maybe if there's deeper problems here that you know about that the rest of us don't, that you just don't see Alek Manoah as a long-term part of the Blue Jays, then you're essentially just giving him away. Because there is no tangible asset you're going to get in return for this guy.
No.
Unless some team takes a crazy gamble that would never go over in any sort of general manager type meeting. So there's no scenario here where you could sell this guy.
No,
because the value is just not there. The only way forward is to find a way to get him back to what he was, or some percentage of what he was. If he could be 75 to 80% of what he was, 80% of a Cy Young finalist
on the cheap too,
good.
Right? Like, he's got a cheap contract. They're not paying him a lot,
right?
It just, I'm putting the cart before the horse because we still, we got to get through August, September. They're in a playoff spot right now. But the idea of getting through an offseason and trying to whiteboard what this rotation is going to look like. Ryu's up. He's not going to return. Manoah now is a complete wild card. You got another year of Kikuchi, who you all of a sudden feel pretty good about.
Yeah.
You got Barrios on term, Gausman on term, Bassett on term. So you're still looking at 4 of your 5 being fine. So you just roll the dice that a complete offseason resets Manoah and you come back and you just assume he's going to be a part of your 5-man rotation? It seems like a dangerous play. But, again, that's something they're going to have to figure out once you get to the offseason. But Manoah being sent down today is pretty wild. And what it does is it opens the door for, if the Jays get into the playoffs here, we know Gausman's going to start. We know Bassett's going to start. Is it Barrios or Kikuchi who would get the ball game 3?
Yeah.
And that might be an even more fascinating conversation and borderline shocking in retrospect than anything else that's happened here.
You would have said that day one of the season.
Just for the record, you have these two options, and guess what? You're pretty happy about both. And you're not sure who to pick because both have been pitching well.
That would have been hard to fathom.
On top of that, Manoah's in Buffalo.
Right.
So chew on that and give me an answer whenever you're ready.
Goes to show, man.
That's sports in a nutshell. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
you can plan all you want before day one. It doesn't matter.
Who could have seen?
Like you obviously have to be prepared. You got to hope for the best, put forth your best footing, but you have no idea what's coming year in, year out.
Yeah,
none. Talk to Alek Manoah about that. Talk to Justin Thomas about that. You know,
but I wonder if they like that. The thing that bothers me about this is it feels like they missed an opportunity here to actually get this guy ready for the postseason.
Right. It was wasted.
It was like,
trying to get him back up as quickly as they
whatever cosmetic. We got to get him back up in a month because he wants it and we want it. We don't want it to look too bad and we don't want it to. You know, it felt like there was a lot of optics involved in getting him back in a month.
Hindsight being 2020, you have to believe in a candid moment they'd admit we completely botched that.
Yeah.
And it was so stupid.
Like, what if he would have been coming up today after a 2-month rehab?
Right.
That seems to me like that's basically what everybody was saying.
Yes.
Seemed more logical. Mm-hmm. Like, not just 2 starts, one in the Florida Complex League and one in AA, but many starts in AA, and then maybe a couple in AAA or whatever made sense. Mm-hmm. I understand that the levels have different pros and cons, but it seems to me like it just they rushed it, and now they're paying the price for rushing.
Now they're paying the price,
and now he will not be a factor unless they get really lucky.
That it's almost difficult to reset those conversations. Like, can he still redeem himself within this season? It just seems like an impossibility.
Well, mentally now, it feels like it's been such a roller coaster.
Right. Like a second demotion within a month and a half.
Right.
It's wild.
Now, what are the odds that he is going to be able to bounce back off this and then be a factor in September when they call him back up and the rosters expand? I don't know.
Even the Buffalo angle is interesting. Like, we should reach out and ask someone down there because generally you get a name value guy like Manoah coming down to Buffalo. Mm-hmm. That's a ticket seller. That's a buzz creator.
Could be.
Is it, though? Because of the reasoning for him coming down?
Yeah, like if it's a rehab start. It's a rehab start and you're on your way back up.
Right.
Then it's a ticket seller. It's like you get a guy that just happened to be injured and he needs a couple of minor league starts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an attraction. This is a guy going the opposite direction.
This guy's joining your team.
Right.
He has a locker now.
Right.
Like he needs a passcode and stuff.
He does.
He doesn't just have the PR guy walking him around pampering
Save him a seat on the bus.
Yeah, it's like, hey, man, we leave at 4, so you better be there. Overdrive brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Herm Edwards coming up. We had the Hall of Fame game in the NFL last week, but now more exhibition action this weekend. And video popping up of Joe Burrow at the facility down in Cincinnati, running a bit, throwing the ball. Catch up with Herm, get his take on that. The Elks. I got to make sure I get that right. The Elks, they were up 22-0 last night, Dave.
Oh, boy.
They still lost. That's 21 in a row?
At home?
21 in a row they've lost at home. 22 in a row now, but they did cover the number.
Well,
they covered the 12.5.
That's the important part.
That's really all that matters. You don't have to win. You just got to cover.
It'd be nice if they did.
It'd be great for them. 22 home games in a row they've lost.
That's the North American record. They've got it to themselves now.
That's awful.
The North American sports record.
Yes.
All the sports put together.
You know how tough that is?
No one has lost 22 in a row at home in any sport ever except for them.
Tough that is.
Think about that.
In all the leagues, football, soccer, baseball, hockey, basketball, everything.
Like if it happens in baseball, you're like, yeah, that can happen. It's like one bad month. This is years. It goes back to 2019.
You play 9 home games a year.
Crazy.
22 in a row. And the Elks had that game last night. And then the Blue Bombers just said, screw it, we're not losing.
These guys?
We can't lose to these guys. They wouldn't be allowed back home. The peg would be freaking.
Right.
So the Elks end up losing last night. 22 in a row, but they did cover the number. Jays Cubs tonight. We'll get into that. Steve Phillips still to come. Ryan Dempster still to come. And Herm Edwards coming up. Dave Feschuk of the Star in here. I'm Brian Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Herm Edwards coming up here in just a moment. Steve Phillips in just over half an hour. Jays Cubs tonight down at the Rogers Center. The tennis continues. Carlos Alcaraz, that was a great match last night.
Wow.
He almost threw it away. He was down a set, and then he had to battle back. He wins a tiebreak in the second set, and he was up 5-2. He had 2 breaks, and he gave him away quick and ends up winning late, and it was another tiebreak in the third set. It was a great night.
He's one of those guys, like, You watched him in the final at Wimbledon against Djokovic. Just has another gear.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot pointing to Djokovic winning that match, right, at Wimbledon. And the way Alcaraz turned that match on a dime in the final set. Me anyways.
He's cheeky too, man. Like he'll do he'll lay down a drop shot that's totally unnecessary.
Those drop shots are amazing.
They're so unnecessary at times, and yet he's got the confidence to do it, and he'll pull it off. And those are crowd-pleasing moments.
He's an artist, man.
That's the kind of guy you want to go see.
He's an artist.
Yeah, you want to go see. And it sucked last night. Andy Murray had to pull the shoot. He's so injury-riddled now. Like, he's up there in age. It's too bad for him. It's too bad for the fans because he was going to play that Yannick Sinner kid, too. He's a stud coming up as well. But you got to see Alcaraz last night if you're in attendance. That's pretty good.
Oh,
you can't beat that.
That's as good as it gets. Like
that's the guy you want to see. You want to be able to say, "I saw Alcaraz and I saw him win." That's a talking point for the rest of the time.
Like unless you're seeing the end of the last generation in Djokovic, Nadal, the Andy Murrays of the world, like he's the next one, man.
The guy.
He's gonna start reeling them off, and he's gonna win them by the handful.
Yeah, someone's got to find a way to challenge him. Like Djokovic still has enough left in the tank. I think he will. Like
he'll be there.
Heard from in the next year or two. But beyond that, Alcaraz is 20.
Nobody in Alcaraz's generation has shown anything close.
Not even close.
Guy's shown.
Not even close. So video, circulating. Joe Burrow. I wouldn't say he's sprinting around in Cincinnati, but he's running.
He's not hobbling.
He's gingerly running around. It's all good. That's moving in the right direction. Here's a former NFL player, head coach, ESPN NFL analyst, one of our favorites. Back on OverDrive, here's Herm Edwards. At what point do you start panicking in Cincinnati, Herm, if Burrow doesn't look like he's ready for week one?
Well, I don't know if you panic, but it's one of those that you got to make sure you bring him along slowly. The thing about Joe Burrow is the last 2 years, he hadn't been available a whole lot in the preseason. So that might be a good thing. I don't know. But I think for him, he wants to be around. He wants to get this thing going. This is a very, very good football team, as we all know. And I think anytime the quarterback is not there, you're always a little nervous.
How close do you think Burrow is to challenging Mahomes for the crown right now in the NFL?
Well, look, Mahomes is chasing Captain America, right?
Right.
He's got a ways to go. They got to win some Super Bowls. Mahomes he's in a whole different class right now. He put himself in that class with Captain America, obviously chasing championships and chasing Super Bowls. So Burrows is a great player, though. His moxie in the pocket, his accuracy, his ability to throw the football, his leadership qualities, all those become a part of who he is, and that's what you love about the guy, right?
Herm, I wanted to ask you, I've been reading about the hype around the Hard Knocks with the New York Jets, and I know you've been a part of a team that's been under the microscope that is the Hard Knocks treatment, and I'm wondering, how difficult is that for Aaron Rodgers and everybody else that's in a leadership position on that New York Jets team to sort of manage the hype around this big show that kind of makes you the featured team of the NFL coming into the season?
You have to be careful. Don't waste too much energy on trying to figure out things to say on television, the night before. I'm going to say this, don't just be yourself. That's what I told guys, for the most part. I said, some of you guys, I've been here now 2 or 3 years. Some of you guys don't talk. All of a sudden, don't become some comedian tomorrow in practice because you want some TV time. And then, like I said before, the hardest thing about this whole deal is that these guys watch it at night. So you got to let them out of the meetings about 10 minutes, 15 minutes earlier because they all want to go run and watch it.
Right.
And then the problem is, they film so much, they film everything. So a guy thinks he's going to be in the scene, he didn't make the cut. And so the next day, the guy says, "Well, coach, I did all that stuff. They didn't have me in there." I said, "Look, I don't edit the tape." I said, "You need to talk to those guys." It's silly stuff like that, for the most part.
I'm almost shocked the player has not negotiated it into his contract. If I'm ever on Hard Knocks, I get a lot of play.
I need a scene.
I want to be on this.
Right. Yeah. You know they're going to take the one story is always that the free agent or the guy that's had a hard time is going to make the team, and then the older guy that's trying to hang on. Those are the interesting stories that everybody wants to see. Everybody wants to see the underdog make the team, right? That's the plot of this whole deal. And it's fun when guys like that can make the team.
With Herm Edwards of ESPN, the Jets have already played a game. They were in that Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
We didn't see Rodgers. We knew that was going to be the case. But where do you stand historically on your starting quarterback, a veteran quarterback, getting snaps in the preseason?
I think eventually they need to get some. I always go by the number and making sure that they're in there with the first unit. I always felt like somewhere in that preseason game, used to be 4, now it's 3, and maybe it's the second game. I don't know what coach is going to do, but you got to make sure one thing happens, that all your starters have to come out at halftime and played in the third quarter. They got to get a feel of that. Going into the locker room, sitting around, and then coming out in the third quarter and maybe getting a series. I wanted them to do that so they could just feel what that feels like. The thing about nowadays is that you have all these combined practices where a lot of times your starters don't have to play a lot because of what you do with the practices against other teams. It's really better than preseason games for veteran guys because you can script out what you want. You can script out in one-on-ones. I want my one against this guy. Situational football, which sometimes you don't get in the preseason, according to who's playing, right? In the red zone, I want these. Third down, I need these. You script all that versus your opponent, versus the team you're scrimmaging against, and the other coaches does the same thing. You get your ones in there, they go hard. Quarterback's not live, everybody else is live. So a lot of teams are taking advantage of it, and this is why you see more veteran guys not playing.
Yeah, and that last part's probably what you're really looking for, right? The quarterback's got the red jersey on, and there's a truce. Don't touch my guy, I won't touch your guy.
Oh,
that's not happening in the game.
Don't even come close to the guy. I mean, don't even wave at him. Don't leave his arm alone. That's what you always tell those guys. Don't hit his hand. Don't hit his arm. Just leave him alone, right? And then both teams know that when you have those combined practices, that's a no-no. You don't deal with that guy.
Herm, you're known as a great motivational speaker. We got a team up here in the Canadian Football League, the Edmonton Elks. They've lost, get ready for this, they've lost 22 straight home games. It is the home games, Herm. It is the North American record of any sport in North America, baseball. Like we're talking about, no one has lost 22 straight home games in North American sports, period. They're the only ones who've done it. If you're coaching that team and if you're taking over that team, I know you wouldn't have been coaching it, but let's say they brought you in to take it over tomorrow. I mean, what would you say to these guys?
Ooh, that. Well, you know what I would do probably? At home, you always wear the dark jerseys, correct?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'd make them wear the visiting jersey.
All right.
Say it's an away game. Say we're wearing visiting jerseys because these home jerseys ain't any good. I change the jerseys. That's the first thing I do.
Yeah, I don't know if it's working great for them on the road either.
Yeah, we did that against the Dallas Cowboys.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't like wearing blue. That was kind of their bugaboo. And when we played them in the championship game, we wore the white. And we were in Philadelphia. They had to come out blue, so they were already mad. And then we beat them up.
That's great. Wow.
Not only did we beat them up, we beat them up in their blue. That even made it worse.
That's outstanding.
But no, you know what I would do? I would change jersey. I would change jersey. You know what else I would do? I would ask, hey, come out of the other tunnel. Just do something different. Just do something. Just different. Whatever you've been doing at home, it don't work. You can't get rid of the players, not getting rid of the coaches. Mm-hmm. You got to change whatever you're doing, pregame, all that kind of stuff. I would be fiddling with that. Just to do something different.
Yeah, I guess you got it, right? Like they're 0-9
22 and straight. That's hard to do.
22 in a row.
22.
22 in a row at home. Goes back to 2019. So it's wild.
Boy.
Yeah, that one's tough. You might need to pay off the opponent not to show up. That might be the next move.
Tell the opponent the game starts like 30 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly. With Herm Edwards of ESPN, longtime NFL player, head coach. Geographically, there's a big connection to Buffalo up here. You know that, Herm, and they've been kind of running the East now for a while. Basically, since Brady left, it's been their division. Miami's been up against it. The Jets, we know what they're expected to be this year. But there's so many great teams and great quarterbacks in the AFC. Are you fully confident the Bills are a playoff lock? Are you willing to go there with Buffalo, or do you need to see it first?
No, I think that when you have that quarterback that's going to throw 30 touchdowns, I mean, you got a chance to go in the playoffs. I mean, I think when you look at the Buffalo Bills, a couple of things going into this camp that they got to figure out is Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker, now he was the defensive play caller. He's no longer there. So who's going to do that for the defense? And then they got to find another corner, right? I mean, they're battling that corner. I mean, White's coming back off injury. I mean, he's the one guy we do know. But then Elam and Jackson and Bedford, they're competing in a three-way battle. Now, Elam was a first-round pick. He got hurt, but they got to figure out who those corners are because you got to get that right. This defense has been very good, 27 takeaways, which was third most in the league last year. But all of a sudden, you don't have your signal caller in there, the guy that sets the defense. And then you're worried about who's the opposite corner, right? And so that's a problem. Because you're playing the Miami Dolphins they might have the fastest football team in offensive football. And then you're dealing with the Jets, and they've upgraded their team as well with the quarterback situation, right? So, you're going to have to deal with that. So, and they do play the Jets first game of the season, last time I checked. And then they play Miami, I think, the fourth game of the season. So They've got two division games in the first month, one at home on Monday night, which would be a big game. That'll be bonkers, right? It's at New York, and them fans will go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a lot. That's a lot on their plate. But with all that being said, you got the great equalizer, and that's the quarterback. When you got that guy, I mean, look, this guy's thrown 30-plus touchdowns in the last 3 years. I mean, who does that? I don't know who does that. That's crazy numbers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
hey, Herm. Go ahead, Herb.
Go ahead. No. I was just saying, and then so you sleep well at night when you have a guy like that. You really do because I got a quarterback. I'm in the game. I'm in the game in the fourth quarter. I can win the game. I mean, I got a guy that can win the game. So you sleep pretty good.
No doubt. Hey, Herm, I was interested. There was a big gambling story in golf the other day. Big talk about this book excerpt from the professional sports gambler Billy Walters about Phil Mickelson's gambling. And sports gambling is so prevalent. We all work for media outlets that have big sponsorships with sports gambling companies, and it's everywhere. We know that. We've seen the NFL suspend some NFL players for getting on the wrong side of it. What's your level of concern as somebody who really cares about the game that gambling, it's something they got to keep an eye on here because there could be a bigger scandal if there's been some small ones, but there's a bigger scandal in the offing here.
Yeah, and I know where you're going with that. I mean, obviously, you would never think a player would ever do something in the fact that due to the money that he may owe or he's trying to win, that all of a sudden that becomes a little bit of how he's going to play that day. It's kind of ironic, you talk about gambling. When I was with the Eagles, a good friend of mine, when he got there was Pete Rose, right?
Right,
and
of course.
So this is kind of going way back, and Pete admitted it. He said, "Look, I was bet on us to win." So,
yes,
but it's just, it's just you got to trust that the athlete won't get himself in a position where he feels pressure because of whatever. That he's got to do something to hurt the team, right? You don't want that. That's just bad ball. This thing is interesting because I can remember, and I came to the league in 1977, guys, a long time ago. You couldn't even go on the off season, no less a season. If you were seen in a casino, like if you went to Las Vegas, you was like, no, you can't. I said, what? On the off season? You can't be on the floor.
Right.
That was kind of one of the deals. And now you look at it and they go, man, they got 2, 3 sports franchises, pro franchises in Vegas.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Amazing.
So it's kind of like, it's just amazing where this betting has gone, and it's everywhere. And it's just, I don't know what you do. And I know they made an example of some of these young guys. And I don't know how you control it. I really don't, because it's so easy to do it. It's just you don't even have to be there.
Right.
You can do it on your phone.
It's crazy. But that makes it easier to track too, right? That's the thing. Now you can regulate because if it's on your phone, you got track records now.
But here's the deal: how many guys got more than one phone?
Well, exactly. A family member, a friend, and they're funneling the.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just. I mean, I don't know. This is hard, man. This is just hard. You just hope that the athlete doesn't get himself in a way where he's got to compromise how he plays.
Yep. That's right.
Because that's you don't want that. It's hard enough to win games. You know what I mean?
You can't have it. I'm with you. Always great catching up with you. Thank you for doing this, Herm.
Anytime, guys. My pleasure. Good luck to you guys.
You too. There he is, Herm Edwards of ESPN. And yeah, the integrity of the sport is the priority here. It's a delicate dance these leagues are partaking in here, especially the NFL. Like gambling is so synonymous with the NFL, and it always has been.
Right.
Yet they always pushed away from it. Now there's so much money coming in that they've accepted it. Not only like pure gambling on a spread or a money line or a total, like fantasy sports is massively lucrative. And the NFL, of course, wants a piece of that. Yet I understand why they punish these guys to such an extent because they have to keep intact the integrity of the game.
Right. For
the gambling. Like, not just like the standard fan who wants to know, okay, is this on the up and up and wins? And
that's the idea.
Guy betting wants to know that it's not, no one's taking a dive against my bet.
Right. Because they got their own bet.
Because they got their own
worried
bet.
about.
Exactly. Like, integrity actually delves into some dark areas.
It does.
And that's why I've seen some people respond like, man, that seems very punitive. Man, that's really harsh. The NFL, you have to do it.
I'll tell you what.
You have to hammer these guys.
It tells you something. They're being punitive because they realize the risk.
It's out there.
If the scandal gets bigger, and to your point, if something comes out that this wasn't just about a guy doing stupid bets on his own phone when he should have been doing it on his wife's phone, because it shouldn't have been under his own name. This is about a conspiracy to lose a game.
Right.
A conspiracy to lose multiple games, which, by the way, some people has happened in the history of sports many times, and some people suspect is in the offing here because there's just so much going on, so much money to be made. And then you see a guy like Mickelson, and you realize it's not about how rich you are. Like, that's always the one you hear about is always, the players are so rich, they make so much money. Why would they risk?
Why would you put that at risk?
Why would they risk their lives? Because guess what? Gambling addiction isn't rational. Phil Mickelson was betting hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, he was doing that before it became legal, before it became so public. Like, that's something I fought against forever. It's like, well, if you make it more, if it's public now or if it's legal, then that's going to lead to an explosion of this. And I never bought into that because now you can regulate.
You can.
Like, now it's not in the alleyways anymore.
Right.
It's on your phones. If it's on your phone, you've incriminated yourself. Like, they've got that. They find it. They can track
unless it's
it down.
a birder and you don't have a track.
Possibly, yes. Yeah. But I guess my point was, and I still stand by it now, is like if you wanted to do that 30 years ago, you could find someone that would help you do it 30 years ago.
Of course you could.
Just as much as you can
Just
today.
ask Tim Donaghy.
Yeah, exactly. Steve Phillips in about 20 minutes. Jays Cubs tonight. The lineup is out. We'll look into it. And Alek Manoah is on his way down to Buffalo. He's been sent down again. What does this mean for his future? We'll catch up with Steve on that and more. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Jays Cubs this weekend down at the Dome. Level of excellence. Adding Jose Bautista tomorrow. We're going to look back on this century in Toronto and put forth our top 5 level of excellence performers.
From every sport.
This was every sport. So if the city of Toronto, let's say Olivia Chow just got in. She goes, you know what I want to do? I want to establish a level of excellence for sports at City Hall. Anyone that worked in Toronto for any of the sports teams, whether it's a player, coach, executive, and we're going to play that role of, I guess, counselor. And Dave, you and I will both have a 5-pack. Players, coaches, executives. We'll do that at 5:30. I had a really difficult time actually getting to 5. And
it's hard
because it's arbitrary completely, obviously. You can come up with your own criteria of what matters, why it matters.
And the cutoff's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, exactly. We just figured 2,000 on. But that's a lot of material. That's 23 seasons combined with the Leafs, Raptors, Jays, Argos, TFC. But a lot of big figures here, big sports figures here in the last 25 years. So we'll get to that around 5:30, and Steve Phillips will join us. We'll get his take on Manoah being sent down. Barrios or Kikuchi, who would get the ball game 3 of a wild card series. And we'll take a look at the lineup tonight and get a read on what we can expect out of the Cubs. The Cubs are not a great team, but this is a cool kind of series to be a part of because they're only in town so often.
Right.
And there's a lot of Cubs fans everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one you want to be going the opposite way. You want to go to Wrigley and see Jays Cubs.
Oh yeah.
That's an all-time great trip.
For sure.
And I don't know the last time they did that. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
For sure. And it should be probably on the docket in the next couple of years.
Well, now with the new schedule, yeah.
Should be.
Doing it every other year. Right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Going back and forth.
So there you go. Got to get down to Fenway, or get down to Wrigley, I guess, next year.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that'd be a great one. All right, hour 2 coming up. Dave Feschuk of the Star in here. I'm Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.